everyone. I'm just going to add a little bit to my husband's story because we're both telling Irish stories today. We finally made it to Ireland in September, and we were privileged to spend the last week in Northern Ireland with a famous Irish teller from Belfast, Liz Weir, and my story will be one of hers. However, on our journeys, we came to the small village of Sneem and learned from the pharmacy that the storyteller that I had learned many stories from, including the King with Horse's Ears, lived in Sneem, and unfortunately we couldn't go and see him because he was quite elderly and in a care facility, but I was really thrilled to make that connection to storytelling, and we had an excellent time with Liz Weir, who has traveled over the States and been a well-known storyteller, and she is in charge of storytelling for all 96 branches of the public library in Northern Ireland. So we had fun on Monday, being St. Patrick's Day, was also our meeting in Victoria of the Guild. We had Tales of the Emerald Isle, and this is one that I told there, the Lord of Benbow. A long time ago, in Northern Ireland, in County Fermanagh, on the top of a mountain, there lived an old man. He lived in a small stone cottage. Now, by our standards, this would not really be a mountain, it would be a high hill. But in Northern Ireland, it was one of the highest places, and the view was magnificent. He was known in the area as the Lord of Benbow because he was known to stand on the top of his mountain by his stone cottage and survey all the land and area around him, the beautiful view, as if he were Lord of it. Now, this man had a son, one son, and sadly his wife died in childbirth when the son was born. And so he was left to raise this boy. And he raised that boy to have the same love of the land that he had. Or at least that's what he had hoped. However, when the boy got to the age that many boys do, a teenager, he just wanted to go and see the world and leave all this behind. He thought it was just, he didn't value it. Well, so the first chance he got, he was given, his father gave him the cow to take to market, and we all know this kind of story. He sold the cow. There were no magic beans, but there was enough money to buy fine clothes and a ticket to England. So off the young man went. And when he got there, landed in Liverpool, he wandered about the city, but found little to interest him there. And soon he found himself wandering about the countryside. And one afternoon, he came to two huge pillars of a gate. And inside the gate, there was a long winding path up to a large mansion. And he was just standing there thinking that that was the kind of place he would like to live, when suddenly there was a voice at his shoulder. "And who might you be?" And he turned to look, and there was the most beautiful young woman he had ever seen. And she was finely dressed. And he said, "Well," he said, "I am the son of the Lord of Benbow from Northern Ireland." And the young woman was immediately interested, and she said, "Oh, "Well, I am the daughter of a duke, and this is where we live. Would you like to come in? Would you like to stay for lunch?" And the young man nodded, and of course, in they went. And no sooner had he got in the door and his feet under the table than he began with the stories. How his father, the Lord of Benbow, had a castle on the highest hill in Northern Ireland, and also how he had lost his luggage. It had been stolen, and he had nowhere to stay. Well, he was a charming and handsome young man, and the family were immediately, "Oh, well, stay here, stay with us." And so he did. He stayed the night, he stayed a week, and a month. And the Duke noticed that, well, couldn't help but notice that these two young people were falling in love. And he thought he better do his homework and find out something about this Lord of Benbow. So off he went to the library to find those books of peerage, Burke's, Debrett's, and he looked through them. But nowhere could he find any reference to the Lord of Benbow. So he went home and asked one of his servants, "I need you to go to Northern Ireland and find out something about this Lord of Benbow. Who is he? What is his castle like? Can you do that now?" And the young man thought he could and was given as close as directions as possible. And so off he went by boat. And when he got to Ireland, well, I don't know if any of you have been there, but transportation is not great, but in those days it was even worse. And so it was horse and cart all the way. And when he went as far as he could by horse and cart, came to a village, and he thought, well, I don't know where the Lord of Benbow is. So he began to ask people, and everyone he asked said, "Oh yes, you're close now to the Lord of Benbow." And they chuckled and laughed, and it was curious, but they pointed the way up the hill, up the mountain, and so he had to, that was as far as the horse and cart could go. Now it was on foot, and it was getting dark, but he set up the mountain, and on this small path in Northern Ireland, it's called a boreen, just a little laneway, and he made his way up there, and it got quite dark, and all of a sudden he heard the clashing and clanging of metal, and he imagined an army in armor, and he looked around in terror, but soon was relieved to see that it was a herd of goats who were clanging their bells and their metal chains. He continued on up the mountain, and soon he could see at the top a light, and he thought, that must be the castle. So up he went. He was getting quite exhausted, but when he came up to the top, there was no castle. There was a small stone cottage with a light on. He felt, well, this is as far as I can go. And he came up to the door. The cottage had a thatched roof, and there really wasn't a door. It was just a straw mat, a thatched mat. And in Northern Ireland, that's known as a sugan doris. It is a thing. Anyway, he couldn't really knock on a mat, so he called out, "Anyone there? Anyone home?" And soon the straw mat was thrown aside, and there was the old man. And he looked in, he saw a small peat fire burning, a lamp, one bed, few pieces of furniture. The old man, when he saw the young man, perhaps it reminded him of his own son, but he welcomed him in. Come in, come in. Come in and have some tea. You must be exhausted. Come in." So in he went, and soon the old man served him a cup of tea. He had never tasted anything so delicious. It was made with goat's milk. And then the old man said, "Well, you'll not be going down the mountain tonight. Come in, you can sleep here." And the young man looked around. There was only one bed. He thought, where am I going to sleep? But the old man went outside and brought in fresh rushes, laid them on the floor with a few blankets, and the young man laid down. And he had the most wonderful sleep he had ever had. He was so exhausted from his travels. And when he woke up the next morning, the sun was shining, and the old man was in the kitchen and invited him up to have some porridge, some stirabout. Again, he felt he'd never tasted anything so delicious as this porridge made with goat's milk. And then the old man began to ask him some questions. "Who are you, and why are you here?" And the young man said he was from England. And as soon as he mentioned that, the old man's demeanor changed, and he looked sad, and tears came to his eyes, and he said, "Oh, I have a son. I had a son. I don't know if he's dead or alive. I think he went to England. I don't know if he went to England. Maybe he did." And the young man was distressed at his sorrow, and he said, "That is why I am here. I am here to bring you news of your son. He is in England, and he is about to be married to the daughter of a duke." The old man's tears turned to joy, and he began to talk about his son and how he had brought him up to love the land and what a fine young man he was. And the young servant was quite touched by this. And so he said he was going back to bring news back to the Duke of meeting the Lord of Benbow. And so it was time for him to leave, and back he traced his steps back down the mountain, got the horse and cart and the ship, and back to England. And as soon as he could get an audience with the Duke, he went in, and the Duke said, "All right, tell me, what did you find? Did you find the Lord of Benbow? And if so, who is he?" So the young man spoke up and said, "I have found the Lord of Benbow. His castle is on top of a high mountain, and his castle is defended by an army that you would not want to meet in the middle of the night. That castle is on top of the most beautiful land, and it's all around the castle, the beautiful kingdom of the Lord of Benbow. Now, that castle has a door that no carpenter in all of England would be able to replicate. And the food that I had there wouldn't be a chef in England who could recreate that. And the bed I slept on, why, he brought me in a brand new bed to sleep on, and in the morning he threw it out, and the next person would get a new bed as well. And his hospitality was outstanding. And I have to say that your daughter is a very lucky young woman to be marrying the son of such a fine gentleman.